All right, traders, welcome to today's market recap. This is Christian from Traffic Trade Group. And again, just trying something new today. I should be live streaming this on a couple places, but we'll see if it works. If not, I will push this video out another way. So I will get right to the themes of the day as soon as I do the risk disclaimer. Make sure that you read the full risk disclaimer there. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only. So themes of the day. I thought there was a couple standout themes of the day. One of which is that we're continuing to see earnings just come in much different than we saw basically the first week and a half of of official earnings season. Big earnings moves driving groups. Datadog had big numbers. The whole software space was very strong today. That group, where did software end up? Finished up 2% for the day. So a couple of those names in there, Datadog, BSY, also FN2 is another one that just was a catalyst for the group and drove a lot of names up. So I'll go over a couple of those names because I find them interesting, whether or not like they are setting up for like basically the start of a move. And it's kind of interesting because the moves were just huge in some of these names. And I think I have those names up here someplace. These are after the market movers, but if I switch this to the regular movers, I mean, TMDX was up 50%. I mean, talk about a name that, hadn't been doing anything, but Datadog was up 28%. AYX was another one that had earnings, and you can kind of go down the list. Maybe if we put this to larger names, you can kind of see this way it kind of separates. But Snow was up 10%. Both of these names, MDB and Snow, were up over 10% for the day. So just again, just big pin action is what often referred to when one name in a group has good earnings and it just sets off a few other names. Interesting today that the small caps just, again, for the second day in a row, not participating with the move. So that's often the case. For example, like last week was a big everything rally, and it usually takes a couple days for the market to kind of settle down, because not everything is going to go up together, right? It's a little bit unreasonable to expect. So what you start to see is some separation between what areas are really going to be strong and what areas just basically had a really good bounce, right? And that's perfectly normal. Like, stocks, I always say this, that's when stocks are in a defined downtrend, they can bounce. Anything could bounce for a couple days. Now, granted, some of the you could argue whether some of these groups are, which I don't really want to get into this conversation because people blow their mind when you talk about bull market or bear market. But I think you could probably agree that not every stock is in a bull market. Some stocks are have been acting more like a bear market. So you can get some really vicious moves, in bear market rallies for those groups of stocks. Now, there's plenty of other stocks that have been acting more like, bull market type stocks. And then also what two other things. Remember, I started, I think in yesterday's video, as I've been starting a lot of these videos, getting bonds out of the way because they are also a catalyst. So it's really nice to see TLT go up 1.5%. There was a 3-year auction, which I know is not nearly the same duration as what TLT is, but it had good demand. Now, tomorrow we get a 10-year auction, and then we get a 30-year auction on Thursday. So just keep that in mind, as TLT will be sensitive to that. But yeah, bonds did very well. There was good demand on that 3-year auction. And, my thought, again, before I move away from the bond screen, is that as long as bonds can stay, TLT could stay above 86.28, then I think we can kind of shift our focus and not worry about bonds the move in bonds every single day. Remember, sometimes equities, they really pay attention to something outside of equity. Sometimes it's crude. Sometimes something else can really affect it, and bond yields were doing that for quite a bit. But as the volatility comes down in bonds, right, you can kind of shift a little bit towards a little bit more of fundamental factors and their own set of catalysts, right, rather than relying on what that's doing. The The dollar, by the way, was a bit stronger today, but notice it did not get into the value area. So it topped out here on what was it, Wednesday, I think, of last week. And since then it's been moving lower, a little bit of a bounce, and I would watch 29.77, but kind of the same thing with bonds, right? We don't really want to see the dollar get much stronger than this. One day moving back into the bottom of value, perfectly fine. Let's move over to equities, and I'll talk about the indices first. Yeah, we're into some resistance here. That's generally the case after we have several up days. I was on Benzinga at the end of the day, and we were talking. I don't count how many days we've been up, but depending on what index you're looking at, because again, it's not IWM, right? IWM has been down 2 days in a row, but I think the Qs have been up like 7 or 8 days in a row. Doesn't matter, because I never get to like, oh, it's day 10, you sell everything, right? It doesn't work that way. I think what happens sometimes is this market tries to be tricky, right? And last week's move was very fast, and not everybody can react to that market that fast. So what it's doing right now is it has trapped some people out of the market, and that's why sometimes it will continue to go up longer than you think it will, because not all the participants can move that fast, right? So you have some buying and still some people reacting to say, hey, we should be in stocks, right? I saw some broker today in the afternoon. Doesn't matter what broker it is, but they just upgraded tech from neutral to overweight. It's like, that's a good example, right? They have clients who follow those recommendations. Like they're doing that today, right? Which again, some of these brokers' recommendations are way late. Some of them are way after the fact. And sometimes that could be a top for the market when, a broker who's been bearish for months and months and months, all of a sudden turns bullish. Sometimes it's the last person in, but I'm not saying that with this particular broker, but I'm just saying that, everybody moves at the pace of their own analysis. So yes, we're still locked inside the value area for the month. This is S&P futures. If you want to look at SPY is right at the top of value, so a little bit better. And also when you look at the 1 hour chart, right? So I talked about this level in yesterday's video, right? Let me just move this over so that you could see the level pop up. 436.29, right? So we're slightly above the value area for the week. Again, there's nothing wrong to complain about that, right? A little bit of sideways action today, right? Again, I think that there's a lot of shifting going on within sectors. Qs, right? They are moving to this next VPOC, right? They kind of hung around this last one on the 1 hour chart. Remember, what is a virgin point of control, right? It is an area where a lot of buyers and sellers have previously met up before, right? This point of control is from this period. Right. So it gives you a sense of where there might be some overhead supply. On the downside, it gives you a sense of where there might be some demand. Right. So in this case, right, and again, if you go back to our SPY chart, right, where did we see demand, right, on our SPY chart? Oops. Right down here. Right, that's where we saw demand, and sometimes this happens. Sometimes you take out a virgin point of control, you go a little bit further, right, and then buyers kind of come in and resurface a little bit. But that acted very well, that virgin point of control. And then the Qs, yes, there is a virgin point of control that's also right here. So again, I don't think not to make a prediction here because I don't like to do that, but I think that we're going to be seeing some type of digestion. I don't know if that happens because of one of these bond auctions that causes a hiccup, or just something else. Powell's supposed to give opening remarks. All of these Fed speakers, by the way, it's kind of moronic in my opinion that so many of them have to speak and say the exact same thing. How much, like, if you're paying attention to that stuff, like, I have Bloomberg, so I get the headlines, but they're just saying the same exact thing in just different speak, right? One is saying, oh, we're going to wait and see what the data points are, and if we need to do something, we'll do something, right? And the next person comes on and says, hey, if we start to see inflation go higher, right, we're going to need to raise interest rates, right? I mean, they're just saying the same thing, over and over. And I don't blame them for taking that stance, right? We haven't seen inflation really go down that much. Now we are starting to see crude move down. Look at what crude did today, down 4.6%, right? And energy stocks, which have been a nice little place to hide out, are starting to break down. And that's a new low there for XLE, and those names were hit pretty hard. If you go back to my spreadsheet here and see what happened here in energy, the OIH ETF was down quite a bit today, down over 4% for the day. Also, your metals and mining. I thought that this was kind of interesting when gold was moving up. Again, I find gold so tricky. Some people think that, oh my God, look at how great it looks. It's funny. I hear the same thing. I've heard the same thing today about small caps. Oh my God, they look so great. I don't know what, maybe people are standing on their head or looking like doing this, and then the small, oh, they look great. Like, I don't know what people are looking at. This is a really sideways chart. Yes, you could do the old zoom out. You're still going to see it as a sideways chart, right? It hasn't gone anywhere in the last couple of years. Now, yes, it's technically consolidating in an uptrend. It's been going sideways for 3 or 4 years. It doesn't want to go higher yet. So one of the things that was telling was when we combed through the gold miners, when gold was going up, because generally you tend to see strength hand in hand like that. And I could not find a long trade in the gold miners. So I think that was telling. Right. By the way, here's what the small caps look like. Right. If you were looking for some type of trend here, I think if you're spending more than 2 seconds and you can't realize that this is sideways, right? It's been sideways all year long, and it's perfectly for now obeying the value area for the year. So again, I will get positive when it starts to move, right? And when there's a trade that there's something to do. But there's scalping that you could do here and there, but there's better things going on. Like, if this is what excites you, I think what happens is people in trading, and some of them are not even trading, right? They're just making market calls. They're basically trying to come up with some type of stance so that they are not going to be wrong, right? They don't really care about making money, right? They care about being right, right? So that means that you're not a trader when you're doing that. You're making market calls. And if you're that biased to think that there's something great going on here in small caps, I don't think that you're trading, to be honest. So anyway, let's move on. Some of this stuff that cracks me up. That's why I kind of go over it in the videos. Biotech, nice bouncer. I mentioned that I wanted to go through a couple of the single name charts now that we went through the indices. Yes, here's what Datadog looks like. Again, I think the expectations were just so low. Yes, we did see some positioning and call buying a couple times over the last couple weeks, where somebody probably had a hunch that they were going to beat their earnings, and they did so. So this is tough. This is still a tough looking chart. Do I think it may be able to take out that 111 VPOC? I think there's a good chance. What really surprised me was this MDB today, because it didn't even have any earnings. Now, again, it's a little bit suspect because still, even though it didn't close anywhere near the highs, it was up 11%. I would watch what it does around 362. I don't think that you have to chase MDB because it didn't have any news itself. But it's not a bad looking chart. Like, you could draw a trend line in here and say, hey, if it breaks above and it stays above this value area, it's not looking too bad. I actually like ZS a little bit better. Zscaler this will come up here. I think just a better looking chart. It still has work to do because MDB is above the value area, so it's in a little bit of price discovery, whereas ZS still has to get through last week's highs around 175. But that's a name that I'm watching. A name that I went long today, which was a member pick today, was VRNS. Now, again, I like to find names where, everybody's looking at Celsius. Everybody on Twitter seems to be looking at like VRT, right? I like to find names that nobody's kind of looking at, just because there's just a little bit less attention on them, and not everybody is looking to kind of play them every second. But I like what this VRNS is. Again, here's the zoomed out chart, but this is also a data and cybers type software name. So for now, I'm long this one. Also, going through and looking at what some of the bigger names did today, this Microsoft has been unreal. I did close out of my position today in Microsoft, and I'll look to get back involved, right? In my trading account, I'm long in my TTG trend portfolio, but in my trading account, I'm out of this one. I made the switch over to XLK yesterday. Nice day for XLK, up 1%. And I did take a profit target in this. Other names after hours, I'll be interested to see. So what's exciting now about this market, I think, is that you're getting a lot of these names that are moving up on earnings, right? So if we look, there's not that many today, but Akamai had good results, right? Akamai, I think, has more to go. I can bring this chart up. I still can't bring it up. There we go. Here's what it did today. It kind of fizzled a little bit today, right? But you could see it's moving up after hours. And if you zoom out, right, you can see that there's a virgin point of control all the way up at 119. I kind of think that that's where the stock might be headed. Another one that I was interested in is AXON, which is the old Taser. I like this chart. And again, I would much rather see names break out to new highs, because then you don't have to deal with any previous sellers, right? So it has to break 224. I think it may have fizzled here a little bit. It hit this one virgin point of control, kind of came in. Again, it's going to have some overhead sellers in here, right? But I'm looking for this name to break out to new highs. Other names that I wanted to go over: Uber. Uber, I'm long in the TTG trend portfolio, and I would watch this level right here, right? So watch what it does at 50. It did take out one of those virgin point of controls. Stock was a little bit all over the place today. Was down, then up, then I think back down again, but it finished right on the highs of the session. So this might be a good stock to watch, provided, and one of the things that could happen here with Uber is that it kind of hangs back a little bit after this virgin point of control takeout. But if it does, that's fine. Would be looking for it to kind of regain. The last one that I'll talk about is Meta. We nailed this one last month in terms of knowing where this thing was going to possibly face some resistance, right at that virgin point of control. As you saw on Twitter on this day, I mentioned that I was taking 90% of the trade off. The last 10% of the trade didn't really work, but I would be looking to get back involved in this one if it can get back here and take out these highs, right? And that would be at least 321 is what I want to see for this to kind of resume its trend. I mean, notice that it had this big long move. It's been essentially been going sideways for a couple months, and I would love to see this begin to move higher. And you've got a 367 virgin point of control on the daily chart. All right, guys, that is it for today's video. My final thought is, just be sensible about this market. We've gone up now a number of days. We're getting a little bit overbought in areas like the Qs. So if it rests a little bit, that's not a bad thing, considering all these companies. Our earnings watch list is now well over 65 days of names that have reported good earnings and have good reactions. The last thing I'll say is if you want a free 5-day look at our end of day and midday note, go to tribecatradegroup.com, just put in your email address and you could begin to receive that. Thanks guys very much. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.